Welcome to the Make Love Easy podcast. It is my great honor, privilege, and pleasure to introduce Kevin, who I've been following for many years. You're very entertaining, you're very engaging, and you have a really unique take on dating and relating. And I still quote your joke about, ask somebody about their abundance in the spiritual community, and they'll tell you everything but what's going on in their bank account. Um, so, welcome. And how did you get into who you are and what you do in the realm of dating and relating, man?
Great to be here, Lewis. Appreciate the invite. I mean, honestly, it's the classic, like, you want to work on what you suck at or what you struggled with the most. So, I was raised like middle class here in Texas. Very shy, very like obsessed with literature, with film, you know, binging sci-fi fantasy, like into the arts, wanted to be a musician, wanted to be an artist. As a young kid, I did a lot of that. But then later, I just realized my gift is like language. And yeah, long story short, being raised Catholic, all the shame that comes with that, no clue about women. I always had women pursuing me, but I had no idea what to do with them, right? And, fast forward, went to UT here in Austin, studied psychology, philosophy, fell in love, high school sweetheart, whole thing, and no sex before marriage, because it's a sin.
Mhm.
And just wasn't drinking, wasn't smoking, goody two shoes, kind of conservative vibes. And I got cheated on. And also just completely naive in university to like the culture of partying and hooking up and all this stuff. And I was just like, absolutely red pilled and devastated and felt like retarded in like the technical sense of like I have no fucking idea what's going on. Like
Mhm.
social cues, masculine, feminine, sex, dating, all this stuff. Um, and then I was kind of like, all right, well, fuck this. Like religion isn't working. So I went like full like evolutionary psychology and reading Nietzsche, and I was getting into yoga at the time and Eastern philosophy, and also, you know, started with plant medicine, first started with alcohol, then went to cannabis and then moved on to plant medicine and then, started taking martial arts and doing yoga and like being a lot of alone time in nature and just, kind of cracked the Pandora's box and was like, wow, there's so much I don't know. And a big thing I was like dating and sexuality. It's like I should probably figure this out. So I became obsessed with like mating psychology, and a lot of it was evolutionary psychology. I was actually working in a psychology lab that was all social psychology, like studying couples and like personality indicators in their apartments and their personality inventories and Big Five and all this stuff. So there was like the science side, and then I was like, what is tantra? What is sacred union? All this spiritual stuff I was starting to get exposed to. And then, of course, found like pickup artistry and, all the online stuff and just kind of ran the gamut. And, many years passed, left Texas, moved to California, sold everything, backpacked through Asia, India, Nepal, Southeast Asia, studied yoga, went to an ashram, like went on the full spiritual hero's journey. And in that time, went to Burning Man, met and dated tantrikas and then got exposed to David Data, Red Way, the Superior Man, classic entry point. And then like, started to like go to workshops and retreats. And at that point had started teaching yoga and doing personal training, which later turned into coaching. Um, and basically like became obsessed with like polarity and dating, both in the energetic sense, which like you read data, it's like, a lot of poetry and it's not very practical, although some of it is, combined with like the kind of science. So like how does mating actually work? Like we are animals and gods, I believe, or godlike. Um, so we have like this divinity and this amazing intuition and psychology, but we also have like base instincts that are all based on fertility and basically making babies. And that's all happening at the same time.
Mhm.
So a lot of what I was studying and practicing and ended up teaching a lot of this. I was really blessed to meet Elliot Hulse early on and started working with him, who introduced me to his mentors and stuff in bioenergetics, which is all Wilhelm Reich, Alexander Lowen, and then Osho, and went to many trainings learning Osho active meditations and bioenergetics. And that wasn't directly related to dating, but I kind of took that with the data polarity stuff and, made my own thing. and started. We actually used to run, me and my old business partners in San Diego. We called them Polarity salons. It was basically like a men and women's event. That was very deep: meditation, breath work, eye gazing, radical honesty, processing, inquiry in group and partner work. And like, I would just watch this happen like magic, no plant medicine, no psychedelics, nothing crazy, just breath and presence. And people are having like huge trauma releases and catharsis, or meeting someone they like fall in love with. And to this day, like some of them are married. I know some of the couples. And of course, at the time I was dating and, practicing all this myself. And so I just kind of realized that this is something that, because I was also coaching, business and personal development and kind of life coaching at the time. And I had clients that were really successful, like clients in the music industry, clients that were also coaches or entrepreneurs making way more money than me. And, they were G's when it came to business and mindset and all this stuff and hustle and getting jacked and knowing how to negotiate and make a deal. But they didn't know shit about women or men, depending on, who they were into. And I just found it so fascinating that divorce rates are so high. All these successful people, the thing they least want to talk about and feel helpless with is actually intimacy. And so I just kind of like, to this day, I'm very interested, and a lot of my client work centers around that because to me, it's one of the biggest blind spots that we have as humans, like the mating game, the dating game. We haven't really figured it out. We figured out all this other crazy shit. We can go into space and we have super AIs now that are becoming sentient, but we still have no clue how to be in a compatible, loving, life-giving, life-affirming relationship, sexually and spiritually, that produces healthy family dynamics and healthy emotions. It's still it's a big issue.
And I love that that's an open inquiry for you. Like, and being totally honest about the current state of, it sounds like civilization-wide psychology, research, data, models. Um, there's a lot of resonance here. I mean, I grew up Catholic, studied philosophy, taught it a little bit. Big sci-fi fan. Dune is amazing. Um, and I think it was author Rimbaud. He said you can't wash off your baptism. So I still, like myself, find myself running aground on not sexual blocks, but I was involved in a off-grid, self-sustainable spiritual community called Earthwaking. Perhaps you've heard of them. Um, and they're Gnostic Christian based on A Course in Miracles. And but they didn't start that way. They started very like open and let's, all the different religions have their place, all the different spiritual traditions. But as COVID happened, the sort of realm of belief started to get smaller and more structured and more focused. And well, all the religions can get you to God, but they all have to walk through Christ. And as I was living at that village, there was this nouveau Christian orthodoxy around sexuality that re-arose in my body and in my experience. And I think similar things can come from people who take the semen retention and the work of David Deida and that kind of a thing too far, where it's like I've got to be really careful with my sexual energy and who I use it with and how often and in what way specifically. And for the first time in like 3 months, I self-pleasured in the past day. It's twice, and I was just like, I don't feel diminished. I don't feel a demonic influence. I don't feel a strong compulsion for porn. I also don't feel that I ignited with one taste we'd call the beast, like where it's now I'm on the hunt. Now I've got to go find more sex and more orgasm. It was just like a thing. And I was like, huh. As I've gotten stronger and more grounded in myself, I think sexuality is a lot less and a lot more than a lot of people think it is. So I'd be curious what your journey to sexual and romantic liberation and capacity looked like in terms of letting go of the Catholic shame and stuckness and judgments, because it's still relevant. I wouldn't have thought 15 years later after leaving Catholicism that that kind of graspy grippiness in an individual psyche could still be a thing. But yeah, what do you think?
I mean, it's very the sign of the times. COVID was an inflection point. It was a global, I believe it was an orchestrated power, nexus psychodrama. Like I don't believe any of the normal narratives. And now they're all being proven. It's not even a conspiracy. It's
Mhm.
total bullshit. But what it did is it forced everyone into like a trauma response, like the whole planet. And that's why you see born again Christianity making a huge resurgence. You see the New Age ideologies being questioned. You see people politically changing sides massively. I think all this is healthy. It's the chaos at the end of history that Terence McKenna would talk about. It's actually really good. It's actually the pre-birth stage of a global civilization. You want to talk about Herbert and the sci-fi authors? It's like we got to get to a type one civilization where the whole species, we're not on the same page. We got tons of tribes, cultures, traditions, but we're like, hey, we're all like related, literally. And we should probably stop killing each other and destroying our home. Like it makes no sense. And that's kind of the litmus test for a galactic civilization, right? And I believe that we're not alone in the universe. I think it's an absurd idea. But anyway, like for me, like you bring up the Gnostic tradition, something I've been really interested in recently. My wife just finished her book and she's writing about the ancient goddess religion and studying, Gnostic Christianity. All the texts found at Nag Hammadi, so like the Dead Sea Scrolls. This is a site in Egypt in the 40s where basically found all the pieces of the Bible that got left out. All the early Christian stuff is a scene in Gnostic mysticism. So these are cults and, they much more resemble yogis than the Christians of today that the church fathers and the Romans took and built what we know as Christianity, Roman Catholicism, and then all the Protestant sects. So you go to the core of Christianity, the Gnostics had a very sophisticated sexual, doctrine that involved, retention, circulation. It involved, treating the sexual energy the way the Taoists do, which I'm very interested in. The Tantric yogins, all the yogic traditions talk about this. Even Sufi, there's parts of Arabic mysticism that talks about it. Sexuality is the most powerful force on the planet. So if you go into the rabbit hole of the New Age alien, hypothesis stuff, lust is actually one of the strongest ways to create control, which you can talk about the porn industry and all this crazy shit, like OnlyFans being such a big thing now. Lust is like, it's actually more powerful than greed or a lot of these other things because it's innate, right? Like we're all sexual beings. It's our birthright, it's our power. There's nothing wrong with it. It's your body, right? If you think that like we just came out of the sludge in a primordial ocean and the universe is random, I mean, I guess you could argue that. I think it's absurd. I think we were created. There is a creator who usually is called God or goddess. And if you think the creator fucked up and gave us these sexual organs and these needs, well, I mean, I got a boat to sail you on because I think that's absurd. So it's like sexual energy, all religions understood that it's extremely powerful and it can be extremely dangerous because unchecked, it can destabilize communities. It can obviously create a lot of unwanted suffering. It also can create humans. So it's important that there's rules and regulations around it. But that goes too far, right? On one extreme, which I experienced as I shared, is like full abstinence, full fear of sexuality, full shame where only monogamy is allowable and it's only within marriage and there's all these rules about it and you can't do anything crazy, just very simple, just for procreation, it's just for this. And like that's not a great model. A lot of the major religions have taken that model though, because it's kind of the go-to move if you want to control this and not let it get out of control. Then there's the other model, which like, hedonists and Greece and a lot of the ancient world was pretty fucking wild. I mean, there's a lot of bisexuality. The Spartans, the greatest warriors of all time, were all gay, which is what made them so strong fighters, because it's literally your lover you're fighting with. Um, and there's just a lot of like group sex and just crazy amounts of polyandry, polygamy, so multiple wives, multiple husbands, concubine culture. That's like the story of humanity. And then today it's like polyamory or like open relating, and like that's the other extreme, right? Like no limits on sexuality. And we've seen, I mean, I've seen personally, I'm assuming a lot of people, that doesn't work either because it also destabilizes community. It creates a lot of drama and psychodrama, emotional chaos. It's not conducive to like a family unit or a community being strong and grounded because the sexual energy, because of pair bonding and emotions and hormones and pheromones, it's very hard to manage. And I've never seen anyone that can manage it well. Honestly, I've seen old heads at like Burning Man and shit who've been polyamorous for decades, but I didn't believe them. Like I just watched and observed them and they had so much drama and chaos. So those are like the extremes, right? And there's plenty of middle ground that's available. And sexual energy is not just for like pleasure, it's creativity, it's wellness. There's all these studies now about how literally like orgasm and sexual energy is literally healing to the body. It turns neurons and genes on and off, and it's for super immunity. And, then we can get into intuition, creativity, and like life force. So cultivating it and learning how to deal with it is very important, especially for men. You mentioned semen retention and being able to control sexual energy as a man is very, very important because we're the electric pole, if you want to use like the polarity terms. We penetrate, we have this electric energy that can give life, right? The seed. And that goes for a lot of things in life. Women are magnetic, they're receptive. The womb is like chaos and darkness, not evil. It's like light and dark. It's a polarized dynamic. And when women learn how to control that, they can become oracles and like have such healing divine power as women when they control their sexuality, and don't become obsessed with like a whore Madonna complex where like you have the good girls and you have like the bad girls and there's this like chaos that it just gets created. But everyone has to find their own way to it. So I think for most people, they kind of have their seasons where they go through experimenting or testing out their preferred dynamic. And obviously, everyone probably has a relationship they can think about that was toxic. And a lot of the toxic relationships are driven on ungrounded sexuality. And that's just like, that's how it works because that's the bonding, agent in the chemical reaction. Once you learn how to control it and channel it, and then it's used in the heart and love between two people that are consenting adults and create this union. I mean, it's the ultimate. Literally produces children and it produces health, longevity, like a glow that is, science can't explain. Talk about the Taoist model or the Chinese medicine model. It's the most powerful way to build chi and like build your field in the nervous system. So it's the most powerful tool humanity has in many ways. Um, that being said, there's people that can go monk mode, not be sexually active at all, but that energy's still in them. It's just they've learned, like these monks and priests and nuns have learned how to like sublimate it, talk about sublimation to, compose great works, be great artists or intellects or scholars, or infuse it into prayer and meditation, which is also a path. And I think everyone, should at least dabble in that very lightly because it's very powerful to, when I work with a client, if they're just dating and hooking up, I often prescribe or like advise, like, hey, there's probably a good season to stop just spilling your sexual energy, to hold it, to intentionally relate to people. And they often have massive insights in that season or massive shifts in their relating patterns.
Mm. Elegant. I'm curious, you talk about this heart-centered kind of sexuality. Like, what is, given, you have the credibility as someone who is now, are you married or is this just a
Yeah.
long term? Yeah. And then celebrating your partner's birthday recently, I saw that. Congratulations to her. What was the most conducive dating and mating style for you to bring about that result and that experience that you have now?
Yeah. I mean, I guess in sidereal astrology, I'm a Leo, but in tropical astrology, I'm a Virgo, and I have all this Libra in my chart. I've had all these people, I've worked with all these like, astrologers and oracles and shit. And they basically all said the same thing. They're like, you're meant to be pair bonded. Like you're not going to be able to avoid relationships in your life. It's a big part of your dharma or whatever. Which is definitely true in retrospect. So I was like a serial monogamous for a long time, just had like all these partners, years and years and years. I've been in like, I don't know, 10, 15 years of relationships. Now my wife and I have been together over 4 years. Um, I went full, like, again, full Catholic, no sex before marriage, so repressed and dated a lot, ran the gamut, experienced a lot of different types of short-term relationships, and even experimented with open relating and like had, two partners at once at one point. And like, that it was a good experience. I'm not saying don't do it, but it wasn't stable or sustainable at all. And that's, in that season. I came out of that and then met my partner now. And like by studying this and just, honestly following your intuition, like you can't scientifically like date. Like there's science, but it is a gut instinctual thing. And compatibility and love at first sight are a real thing because our genes and our biology have a compatible mate or counterpart, and you'll feel that. It's very strong. And then also communication, emotional regulation, emotional intelligence, knowing how to compromise and give and take in a relationship and be a good partner is a huge part of that, which, I'm very blessed. We're very compatible and
Mm.
have the same values and principles. And that's why I married her. It's like I was searching for that for so long and had long seasons of monk mode where I wasn't with anyone and kind of was in my own world. But I really think for most people in the world, you want to talk about magic or like things like Dune or Lord of the Rings, like you have this hero's journey or fairy tale. For most people, unless you're a great artist or have huge dreams and visions you want to build, which you can have both, falling in love is going to be one of the most magical things in your life, if not the most magical. And who you choose to partner with or mate with is one of the biggest decisions, probably more important than career or other things, because it's a lifelong commitment if you want to go down the marriage and family path. And so for me, it was a massive step to ground and like center myself in my path. Like for both of us, being together, everything gets better. Our health, our business, our money, our abundance, our spirituality, you know, our well-being. And that's our design. Humans are designed that way. We're designed to pair bond. Um, the shaman or the seer or the oracle in a village might be single because their work requires a certain thing, but that's a very small class. For most people, the man, woman, masculine, feminine dynamic is the most healthy, stabilizing force in a village or tribe or community, and that ripples out. And I'm seeing that now. Like all our friends, all our couple friends are either married, pregnant, already have kids, or in that season. And we're entering that season as well. And it's like just seeing the love that flows and the beauty and like the business up levels and all of it. It just makes sense. And if you're in a younger phase or you're more in the knight or the maiden archetype and you need to explore and date around or whatever, that's totally fine and that's healthy. But I think for most people, like they're going to get to a stage where every client I've ever worked with, especially the women, but even the men, it's like they just long for partnership. It's an innate thing that is very top of mind for every person you see walking around on the street when you go outside.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. The subtlety, sophistication, the precision with which you laid out the seasons and distinguishing how people might move through the world with different orientations to this fundamental question and issue, which is like, how do we find our perfect person, or how do we conduct ourselves as we're growing in maturity towards them? This is what I draw out as implications from what you're saying. I'm curious, you mentioned astrology. What is your take on compatibility between people via systems of, well, I don't know that we call astrology divination anymore. Well, it's more of a science, but I mean, there's like Vedic astrology, there's gene keys, there's wealth dynamics, there's human design. I have, in fact, have a friend who's concatenating, like he's constellating all these different results from these different systems, and then his algorithm will match people like Tinder, except based on what is most in the highest good of someone for percentages of compatibility via systems. And I mean, I think somebody could get obsessed with that. You look at Martin Uchik and Integral Manual for Relationships, and I was like, all right, I like spiral dynamics, but who's actually going to practice this? Of like, what level are you in what area of life? And yeah, what's most common for your clients who find their ideal partners? Like, what is their path for constructing or gathering that data, whatever they need, and then manifesting the actual partner.
I mean, I love this stuff. I'm a 5-1 manifester in human design, so I got that investigation line. I like the systems. They're really interesting to me. I mean, astrology, people shit on astrology, especially more like business head masculine types, but got to realize astrology like predates mathematics and natural science. Like all the ancients were studying it. That's not like nothing. Like there's something going on. I see it as like, it's reading the cosmic weather. There's like a clock or an order to the universe. There's all these different systems like Vedic astrology, tropical, sidereal, Chinese astrology, but they're all picking up on the same signal. So, you can throw out the baby with the bathwater, but there's definitely something to it. Human design is interesting, and the gene keys and some of the newer systems because they were channeled and they're kind of combining like numerology, astrology, the chakra system, the I Ching, whatever. I take a little bit from all of them, and I think they're valuable. I do think in terms of compatibility, astrology and human design, I think are the most practical or tactical. Um, I've recently got into wealth dynamics. I don't know as much about that. I don't know how that like weighs in on compatibility, but people reading like, Cosmopolitan or like horoscope stuff, nice.
Yeah.
Um, and they're all basing their dating on that. It's like you can get lost in the sauce pretty easily because they're like, oh, I'm a Cancer. I have to be with this kind of person and blah, 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 blah. It's like, yeah, not really. Like you can't outwork incompatibility. So that's just like a human to human thing. But if you're not perfectly compatible based on these like spiritual, maps of yourself, that's not actually the biggest deal. It's going to be real life stuff. Like mainly principles and values are the biggest predictor of compatibility. And the top two reasons for divorce are infidelity and financial issues. So it's like sex and money, sex, money, and power, the first three chakras if you want to look at that system, which obviously you want to get up into the heart, but that stuff is really present. It's survival needs, it's mating and social bonds, emotional regulation. So for most people I've seen is like you focus on real world compatibility, like what are the principles and values you want? Physical attraction is important, emotional communication and compatibility is important, and like get all that right and like date in good faith and be honest and open and radically transparent and ask for what you want. And then you'll find out later that all these systems support that. If you do it the other way, you just get lost in the sauce and you get in your head of like, well, I'm a generator with this channel and I need this person. And like, it's just that's not going to serve you. So that stuff to me is just like sprinkling on the sundae. You can add the sprinkles and the cherry and the banana, but you need to focus on the meat and potatoes or the ice cream. That is the real world day-to-day stuff. That stuff is more nuanced and course correcting. Like, I mean, it is crazy. Like me and my partner, super compatible. Our human designs fit like Legos. Like I'm all upward defined, she's lower defined. We have multiple channels that like Lego complete each other. So it's pretty crazy. And we've had astrology readings with these master astrologers, and they're like, yeah, we have like crazy dharmic synergy between all these houses and things. But that all happened after we discovered that after we were, together for a while and experiencing that. We weren't like basing the relationship on that. That was just like, oh, this is cool. And like we can study it. And like it gives a lot of fodder in a committed relationship for like dynamics and patterns with you and your partner that you can explore and play out and course correct. That's the value of those systems for me.
I love the sharp, strong context to put around that because you have something that I don't witness a lot in the conscious community, which is you have a mind, but your mind doesn't have you. Meaning you have the full power of critical thinking and philosophy turned on, which so many people cobbling together a series of incoherent memes from Buddhism and Taoism and Hinduism and Tantra and whatever. Like, this is one of the reasons why Christianity is becoming so prominent is it's as a memeplex, it's stronger than these other things. And your capacity to uh, I mean, I'd be surprised if you weren't a millionaire by now, but like to remain heart-centered and oriented towards that while also dancing with the mind. I'm curious what your journey has been with that. Commonly, my perception from my teachers is life is a journey from the head through the emotions to the heart, from slavery to freedom, from like the split distinguishing thing to the experience of oneness. And I was just talking to one of my teachers about how relational love is a playground and a testing ground, kind of a stress test for distinguishing our unique capacity to love and give love and receive love from the divine. So it all comes together. But yeah, how do you dance with all of those?
Yeah, I mean, the heart is primary. Like the heart is the most powerful force. Look at Buddha or Christ, Yeshua, Krishna, all the avatars in mythology and religion, they were teaching the heart. Now you could argue like Yeshua was like the heart avatar because it was all unconditional love, compassion, forgiveness. Buddha was like, Gautama, Siddhartha, whoever that was, if it was a real person or not, which I don't think matters, was the mind avatar. So it's like, the Vajrayana path or like the Bodhisattva is a perfection of the mind, but it also has to do with the heart. So like, our heart is there's all this science now. You look at heart math and all this stuff. The heart has neurons and is a brain too. It can have precognition. So your heart, your emotions are actually atemporal. They can feel things before they happen. You can go into memories and like basically time travel with your heart and emotions. And there's science now. This isn't like woo. This is pretty crazy. Like scientists don't even understand how it works. The mind, though, is our like tool. It's like I think it was Einstein or someone is like, the mind is a wonderful servant but a terrible master. So the evil in the world, and evil is just anything that's like against natural law or trying to repress like the light, which is divinity and human consciousness and our species like basically living in peace and prosperity. The evil is all mind dominated because it's all control based. So look at the tyrants running the world or these fucking shadowy sects that are trying to control everything. It's very mental. So it's very divorced from the heart and emotion. It's all about control and trying to figure things out to like technically change them. You could argue the dark side of technology and the technocracy, transhumanist shit is this. Um, but you have to have both because just heart-centered people in the forest growing avocados and loving each other, they'll get wiped out by a well-armed, technologically superior force, which has happened in history a lot. This is the story of history. So we have to like, take no shit, but also like understand how to like defend ourselves. And to me, the mind, talk about Dune, it's the ultimate weapon. Like if you can understand systems and philosophies and the technical way the world works, which there's a natural law and order to the world. The mind, I mean, I've always been this way. I'm just hyper curious and I'm an investigator. I love to understand things. It's a form of love. When I love something, I want to dissect and analyze and understand it. And obviously, I can get lost in that. And it can be a curse because I'm making, maybe it can be over analytic or overthinking. But I've always been blessed with like a strong intuition and a very like light, I'm also a comedian. Like I love humor and like joy and like having a good time. Like I can throw a rager of a party because I genuinely love other people and beings. I love animals. I got my two doodles laying here next to me. Like that has grounded me. Or like there's a version of me that definitely could have gone full dark and like, I wanted to be a psychotherapist or do research psychology and like, just go full mental into academia, be this mental master, blah, blah, blah. But like my soul and my heart wouldn't let me do it. That's why I left. I was applying to grad schools and like I was obsessed with PhD psychology and all this very heady shit. And I was good at it, but my soul is like, you can't do this. Like I was literally unhappy and around people that were unhappy in these university laboratories and stuff. And like, I couldn't do that. Just like with business, even it's like, oh, you could make a lot of money doing this. It's like I can't do it because it's not aligned with my being and like the actual love and compassion that is primary, that is actually more powerful than any amount of control and analysis can ever be. So we have to have both. Like the center point between them, you could call it Tao or like the flow state, is the most powerful state. All the people, like the super successful entrepreneurs or teachers or spiritual leaders, they've have their own version of this, which is why when we see them or hear them, we feel something. It's because they're tapping into their expression of that. And like we need that on a mass scale in humanity of people that are, this is in like one of the, I think it's from Tibet, the Shambhala warrior prophecy. It's basically these Shambhala warriors will be born on the planet in the end times, which, here we are. and their mind will be like cutting like a sword. So they'll be very discriminating and clear. Like they're not going to be able to be deceived and there's not going to be bullshit because their mind is hyper developed. But their heart will be like a flame and it'll burn with compassion. So it's like they're still warriors, but they have love, and this is the most powerful state, that I aspire to and visualize as a superhuman, aspiration. That's what we need on the planet. We don't need neurochipped AI people who are hyper analytical, which we're going to see. We also don't need hippies wearing loincloths, just singing Kumbaya, but then getting absolutely devastated financially or in a community because they have no mental models of what's going on.
It's not always that midway through the recording of a podcast, I just desire to re-listen to the podcast that I'm recording. So that just happened. Um, and I love your distinguishing of the mind as the ultimate weapon. I mean, one of my teachers of philosophy, dear friend, he used to say any tool can be a weapon, and vice versa. So, like, I think that's ultimately like it, as you said, as you quoted Einstein, a wonderful servant, but a terrible master. And it's intriguing. So you talk about the end times, and I've also seen a lot of posts from you kind of distinguishing or pointing to, if I remember correctly, the kind of erosion of gender. And it seems like the negative forces, there's a conspiracy to efface the biological level distinction that is pretty obvious to most people who are looking with confusion and disorientation. We can go full woo and down the rabbit hole with this. I'm curious why you might think that's happening and what you might want to say about all of that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very open-minded and liberal in the classic sense, or I think anything goes and do whatever the fuck you want as long as you're not impinging on others' freedoms or harming them. So you call that libertarianism or whatever. So that's my actual personal belief. I've worked with transgender clients, both versions. I've been in men's circles with trans men. Um, so I've experienced it uh, head on, and I've had multiple friends that are gay, and like. So I don't think all of it is bullshit. There's been twin-spirited or non-binary people all through history. They're often in the shamanic class because they have special gifts and their spirit is more fluid. Um, Now, that's one thing. And if you talk to like real people in the LGBTQ community or whatever, they get it and they're very like grounded in it. And then there's all the propaganda and the crazy shit, like gender affirming surgery and like, chemical castration and letting children, mutilate their bodies. I think that is just pure evil. And there's no way you're going to convince me, like a scientist or a psychologist. It's like, well, this is what they feel and it's their identity and da 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 da, da, and let's do a surgery. When you look at the money behind that, number one, that's the first place you go if you want to go into conspiracies. Who's getting paid? Where's the money going? Where's it coming from? It's super fucking dark. But more interesting to me is the cultural effects because obviously there's two sexes or genders. You look at the Bible or everything, it's like God created man and woman. There's a duality. There are twin-spirited beings that are more fluid, so you can call these trans people or queer non-binary people. That's real. That's rare though in nature. That's not like a norm. So the number is like there's some crazy stat of like the Zoomer Gen Z generation, like the number that identify as gay or transgender is like it's gone up astronomically. This is a lot of propaganda and social conditioning. And this is, you know, I take it all with a grain of salt because I don't know. I believe in the Taoist kind of way where it's like we don't actually know enough about what's going on to worry and project these like we're being victimized by this dark cabal of Illuminati. I think a lot of that shit is real. There's a lot of evidence for it, but I don't pretend to know. What I do know is that in history, it's happened to the Romans. This happened to a lot of the Mesopotamian Ur Babylon civilizations. At the peak of their empire, they fall into decadence. So it's like fucking orgies and violence and gladiatorial games and just like gender becomes fluid and everyone's fucking and killing each other. And that's actually a sign of like a decadent culture that's actually gone out of control in its like locus of what is meaningful for a civilization, which is like life affirming, building community, raising the next generation, having principles and values. And our civilization is definitely entering that phase, or has been in that phase for a long time of like this decadent fall of an empire. And in that time, transgenderism, confusing the genders, blurring all this stuff is quite common. So in that sense, it's kind of right on time in the historical context. On the spiritual war level, if you want to go there, if you confuse gender and man and woman, you sever one of the most powerful bonds that builds up community and tribal village, relations. So if men and women are at each other's throats, and then you can't even define what a man or woman is, birth rates go down, sexual and gender violence goes up, community bonds and social ties go down. And that's a recipe for control. That's classic divide and conquer. If you're an evil being that wants to like manipulate and control, well, that's one of your first chess moves is you want to fuck that up so people are confused, first off, so they can't organize and resist. And two, like the primary bond that builds a community, which is the relationship between a man and a woman, masculine and feminine. Again, masculine and feminine aren't gendered in the sense of the body. You can have two men or two women. They're going to have masculine and feminine poles. It's just polarity. So again, that's fine. I'm not against that. But at a basic level, the society is built on that connection and bond. So if you fuck that up, like you can do anything. You can roll out all kinds of totalitarian, authoritarian control mechanisms because the base unit of the culture can't defend against it or even know what's going on because they're too busy at each other's throats and in confusion. And the most tragic part of this is what it's doing to the children and the younger generations.
Mm.
That's where it's pure evil. And I think, obviously there's a big pushback to it now, and I'm not actually worried. I think enough people are awake and parents are like, fuck this, get this out of my children's minds. Don't put any of these chemicals or pharmaceuticals into my children's bodies. Because it's a sovereignty, it's a body sovereignty issue. And that is one of the most sacred primary things for humans is like, it's your body, it's a gift, it's this divine, amazing instrument, this vehicle, and it's sacred. Like you can't control it or alter it without consent. Now, manufacturing consent and all the propaganda is the sad part. So, I've taught this before. Like I did this class in Bali and I've done it online a few times. It's basically like Harry Potter Hogwarts. It's like defense against the dark arts. Like you need to actually understand how the propaganda and the mind control works so you can counterspell it and understand like to defend against it. And I think more people are going to find that they're going to need to know this stuff so they can raise their kids the way they want to, not the way the state or these forces want to.
Mm. Super balanced and solid. I love this elaborate answer to this. It leads in a couple directions. You're talking about spiritual warfare. Why do you think we're in the end times specifically? And what does spiritual warfare mean to you? Because it means something very specific for my Christian deliverance oriented friends who, cast out demons and immediately shift people's perception and embodied energetic from one moment to the next. But I also don't know if what they're doing works because because their model is accurate. It may be working at an energetic level but yeah, there's a whole world there. What do you think?
Yeah, it's a huge rabbit hole. I mean, there's amazing, it's pretty recent podcast on Rogan. It's Greg Braden. It's one of the OGs. He goes deep into this, and even Matthew McConaughey. I'm a Rogan guy. I think Joe is epic. Matthew McConaughey and him are like talking about the Book of Enoch and like Gnostic, Gospels and the spiritual war that's described there. And I mean, first off, the end times aren't the end of the world. So people have been predicting the end of the world forever. Like, the dinosaurs were the sixth mass extinction. There's been six mass extinctions on the planet where it's like literally end times where like 75 to 95% of all life on the planet gets wiped out. And this has happened throughout our history. Is there going to be a seventh one? Maybe. So that would be the literal end times where it's like it's over. Human civilization, like we go back to the Stone Age. There's a couple survivors. They got to repopulate the planet. That could happen. I don't know. I don't think that's going to happen because you can look at all the time systems, right? So time is not linear. Time is circular. It's a spiral. It repeats and there's cycles. The Yugas and the Vedas talk about this. The Bakhtuns and the Mayans talk about this. The Chinese have their own system. The indigenous, the Hopi talk about this. There's like the age of the fifth sun, the sixth sun. every culture has a time model, and in the time model, there's the time of transition. Now, it seems like the end times, where there's people right now walking around Austin in their Tesla, and they might be materialists or whatever, and they literally think the economy is going to crash, China is going to go to war, and it's all over. And they're like operating in this fear-based mentality. To me, as a mystic, as a bohemian philosopher, it's exciting because the end times create a lot of opportunity. You know, apocalypse in Greek just means revelation. It means to reveal, the great revealing. And that's why we're seeing all the corruption. We're seeing all the crazy dark shit that's been happening and it's being brought to the light. That's the apocalypse is starting to see clearly and the veils are being removed. It's not the end of the world. It's actually the beginning of a new age. You know, you can argue we're in Kali Yuga. If you actually look at the Vedic count, we're in Dwapara Yuga. So it's like Kali Yuga is the dark age or the iron age. Dwapara Yuga is like the Bronze Age or whatever. It's like one step moving towards Sattva Yuga, which is like the sacred or holy age, the golden age. So we're actually out of the woods. You know, it doesn't feel like it. I mean, we're not out of the woods, but we're not in the darkest of the dark. You could argue like World War II and the atomic bomb and like mass genocide and all the crazy shit. Although, you know, not to speak about Gaza and the Middle East, which is its own shit show right now. Um, we're not out of the woods, but it's a very strong case to be optimistic because the spiritual war, it's basically an arms race. And, you know, this is where like the Christians have their version, the Arabs have their version, the Jews have their version, you know, the Taoists and Buddhists have their version. They all talk about this. They all have angels and demons. There's good and evil forces. They all have spirits and your free will in this realm, the earth is a realm, is very important. And so you get to choose with your behavior and decisions how you show up in this time where there's a strong spiritual energy on the earth and shit is hitting the fan. So you can go full, you know, I'm going to get the AI chip or the mark of the beast. You know, the Book of Revelation is a map for the end times. And there's a argument or a theory that like the powers that shouldn't be are literally trying to create the end times in Revelation by, you know, instigating proxy wars and disseminating propaganda and using AI and social media to like to play out like a psychodrama theater the agreed upon end times and you know Revelation, which you know the Abrahamic religions have a lot of sway right now. So like they're kind of the nexus. Like everything that's happening in the Middle East, I don't think any of it's coincidence. Like you see, like the building of the next temple, the slaughtering of the red heifer, all the crazy shit that is obviously a humanitarian crisis, and a lot of it's pure evil. I don't agree with anything that Israel's doing or all. I mean, it's dark, but you got to understand, like mythology and prophecy and religion, this isn't just like woo-woo stuff that's in a book that you just go to church and hear about. Real governments and forces on the planet are trying to enact this stuff like a ritual. Like the world is magic. It's all fucking ritual. It's like Wizard of Oz. Don't pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. This stuff's being orchestrated and good always wins. Like it's like light. Like a single candle can banish a room of darkness. So like the natural order of the universe is that good or the forces of good. It's like the Jedi in Star Wars or you know the Fremen and the Bene Gesserit and Dune. Although you could argue there's good and bad there, but the good it can't be extinguished because it's the primary force. Now, evil or like the bad is allowed to exist because it helps evolve the good, is one way to look at it. I don't know if I even believe that, but that's a powerful model. So everything that's happening, the spiritual war, it's like, wait, why would a good and loving God, like the Christian God, for example, why would he allow any of this? It's completely fucked. It's one of the oldest theological problems, right? The problem of evil. Book of Job is all about this. There's all this interesting stuff in the Bible about it. Good and evil are locked in an ancient struggle. And I mean, this is synchronistic because this is Greg Braden goes off on this with Rogan, you know, it was like a few weeks ago. And basically, like the evil forces know that they lose. You know, you could talk about time travel or like they can see what's happening. They read the writing on the wall. The age is shifting. The evil can't survive. Number one, like the Sith in Star Wars, which again, I'm a Star Wars guy. The Sith lose because they fight each other. So that's a problem with evil, like the factions and the betrayal. They'll destroy each other. Now the problem is they trash the hotel room before they check out. So that's kind of what we're seeing is like the mass proliferation of the evil or the darkness is going to cause a lot of chaos, but at an equal and opposite rate, just like a chemical reaction, every evil act, mass psyops, mass control, wakes up an equal and opposite number of humans to their actual divinity and life force. And so
Mhm.
the universe is automatically balanced. Karma is real. If you are an upright person of vision and value, and you're pro-life and life affirming, you're not worshiping a death cult or wanting to destroy things, like you will see miracles happen. You will see magic in your life and money and love and healing and intuition and synchronicity, meaningful coincidence just flood your reality. And that's going to be an intensification as we move forward. The date is like 2027 or 2030. There's all these dates. Like we're in like an eye of the needle right now, where over the next 3, 5 years and then beyond, there's going to be defining moments for the species around the relationship between technology and biology, the relationship between spirituality and religion, and the relationship between human tribes, putting to rest old grudges and revenge and these blood feuds that have lasted thousands of years, and moving into, it's not going to be a utopic golden age or paradise. Like that's naive, but the timelines are going to split. You can go live in a smart city and be plugged into an AI supercomputer and blah 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 and give up body sovereignty. People are going to do that. That's going to happen. We're probably going to see some sci-fi crazy shit. And then a lot of other people are going to choose sovereign, life-giving families of highly organic, ultra-human, healing their own body, using their minds to create explosion, a renaissance of creativity and, systems, finance, housing, social structures. I'm big on blockchain and cryptocurrency. I think certain technologies will actually help this process, and not all technology is bad. But yeah, long story short, the spiritual war is real. Even if you don't believe it is, there's just evidence all around you. And every person matters in this like play. It's a giant drama. The Hindus call it Leela. It's like the divine play. And in the play, you got to have a villain. You got to have this like opponent. And it's playing out, even though it can be very scary. And obviously, for some people in the world, if you're living in Gaza or like parts of the world that are literally war torn right now, it's not just like a spiritual idea. It's a literal daily survival struggle. And we have to move beyond that. Like we have to get to a point where like stuff like that isn't happening on the planet. Because we have the technology, we have the resources, the earth is hyper abundant, we're not overpopulated. There's so much raw material on earth that every single human, I mean, Buckminster Fuller did the literal equation and math on this like in the 40s and 50s. Every single human can have clean air, clean water, clean food, housing, basic needs met, done. Like we've had the resources for that for like arguably a century. The only reason that's not the case is because, demons are running the show in a sense, whether you want to talk about literal demons or humans that are basically acting like demons because of greed, lust, power, these dynamics that are still playing out on the planet at an insane level.
Mm. We went cosmic.
Yeah, I mean, that's the tip of the iceberg. Like this is the shit I think about and research a lot.
No, it's good to hear it from someone who's thoughtful and deeply considerate and evidence-based and trained in science and all of that. It's reassuring in an interesting way, um, because I've heard it from people who maybe their sense of critical thinking and reasoning is not as sharp. Um, but so everyone counts. Bringing it back to making love easy in a more sort of visceral way, how does one thrive as a man in dating, relating, mating in the modern world? Like, what would you recommend to someone who wants to be an upstanding individual of virtue, contributing and receiving miracles from God because they're serving life and whatnot?
I mean, the thing about the state of like men today is, more men than ever are willing to heal, be vulnerable, and like step up in their life. Because like men's mental health is a huge thing. Like the suicide rate for men is 9 times what it is for women. There's a lot of really dark stuff and sad stuff that's happening to men. Addiction, infidelity, financial struggles, all this stuff. And when I work with a lot of men and like it's real. And again, the biggest one is usually sex, dating, marriage. Like their woman, they want to meet the mother of their children. They want to be an upstanding man. It's very simple. Like men are linear, sacred beings that are connected up to spirit, and our role is to protect and provide and to defend. We're guardians and fathers and brothers and sons, and we've been hunters, we've been warriors, we've been soldiers, all these archetypes. The modern man, first off, women are craving masculine men. So all the women I work with, these spiritual six, seven-figure coaches, women that are super into all this stuff we're talking about, the spiritual stuff, they just crave a grounded man who can lead them, claim them, be open and honest, loving, and powerful. Like take no shit, have a strong body and mind, have a connection to God or spirit. And if you're a man and you're unsure of what to do, become that version of yourself. And women are going to be wildly attracted to you. Women actually don't want wishy-washy, ultra spiritual guys that are, sleeping around or manipulating or people pleasing or fawning, which a lot of guys, like myself included, recovering people pleaser. I work with a lot of people pleaser men. That's how we were trained, either because our mothers, our teachers, our priests, culture. That's like the sad part of the state of the masculine is a lot of men have been neutered or castrated energetically to fit in or to get the job and get the money, get the girl, blah blah blah. But it doesn't actually work in practice or reality. So as a man, it's like training is key. Like you need to train your body, you need to train your mind. Look at Socrates. Like Socrates was jacked. He was a wrestler. He was also the top philosopher. And he often talked about, he's like, yeah, being a philosopher is great and knowing all the theories and be able to eloquently speak and orate. But if you don't train your body and know the strength of your body, it's like you're not actually a man. So like a lot of men fall to one side or the other. Historically, I went full mind and knew everything, but until I got into yoga and martial arts, I didn't actually understand the power of my body. Other men go the other way. They're all into biohacking, cold plunges, CrossFit, supplements, but they haven't actually done deep inquiry on themselves or understood their personal philosophy or beliefs. And like that, they're coming into that. There's a joke in like all the podcasting entrepreneur communities that like the nerds are becoming bodybuilders and the bodybuilders are becoming like thought leaders. It's like there's kind of a crossover happening for a lot of men, which I think is great because we need both. Most men today just need group of men. So it can be a formal men's circle, doesn't have to be. You just need men you can trust and be open and honest with. Men bond by doing shit together. So we hunt together, we build together, we create together. Um, you need that in your life. So if you're isolated, you don't have men, that should be your first step. And then in terms of dating and relating, it's like men just don't realize, and I work with like single men who are, pretty successful, good-looking guys in their 20s, 30s, or 40s. They just don't realize that if they are interested in a woman, go up and talk to her. You can use apps and websites and stuff, but it's more powerful. Just go up and talk to her. Tell her that she's beautiful and that you're interested. Tell her a time and date, pick her up, take her on a date, and then just be fully radically honest about what you want. If you want a long-term relationship, say it and say what you want and how you want it and ask her questions. If you are only interested in a short-term relationship, be honest. You can have that, but you can do it with integrity and honesty. And this will put you instantly in the top like 10% of men in the dating pool because most are playing out deceptive games and Machiavellian mating strategies that were learned through porn and Tinder culture and all this shit and hookup culture, which you can do that too. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. It's just not going to give you what you want. You're not going to create a loving, compatible relationship. It's not going to have longevity or sustainability. And you're going to treat yourself like that kind of partner. So yeah, it seems cool because of Hollywood and stuff to sleep with a lot of women and rack up your body count and be this kind of player, James Bond, whatever character. But then at the end of the day, who are you left with? Yourself. When you're alone, sitting on the edge of your bed, when you're alone with your thoughts, it's not serving you. It's draining you emotionally, spiritually, sexually. So a lot of men just like need to, sack up in a good way, be fucking honest, have integrity, go for exactly what you want. The worst thing that's going to happen is you're going to get rejected, aka redirected to a more compatible woman or date. And like if you talk to women, which most of my following and I think most of the people I've talked to about this are women, because men historically don't want to open up as much, which is natural. This is all they want. They're tired of the games. They just want like straight up honesty. That doesn't mean it's easy because it's simple, but all the trauma and healing and the sexual relationship, that's all going to play out. But if you're honest and you're walking with integrity as a man and you're, fully aligned with your purpose and to spirit, God, your path, and you're doing the best you can, you're going to be able to work through all that stuff. Like that's not an issue. And a lot of men are just afraid of going into that. So it's safer to play small and be a people pleaser, be a player, avoid all that. And we need a lot more men to step into it. And the more men that do, that's one of the reasons back to the spiritual war that things are fucked up is because men have been sapped and drained. And when men aren't fully online and powerful and sense making together and running shit,
Hmm.
I believe in like an egalitarian like partnership society, but patriarchy isn't bad. When men are actually in those roles, all the women feel safe and then they become better mothers and lovers and wives. And then the children feel safe. And then the men get the life force from that. And it just creates this Ouroboros of healing and wellness. When men aren't showing up like that, yeah, women will take on men's roles, become masculinized. They feel unsafe. There's a lot of trauma, a lot of deception. Children don't feel safe. Cycle repeats. And that's kind of where we're at. Like the cycle just has kept repeating for a long time.
What are the most important things to thrive in relationship? Like once someone has achieved that connection in partnering, in pair bonding.
It's honesty is even more important. Like honesty dating is the most attractive thing, but then when you're honest with your partner, you both get your needs met. You're playing a positive sum game instead of a zero sum game. So it's like I get my rocks off, I get what I want, but someone has to lose. So a lot of women feel like that's them and like the more traditional backwards kind of relating if you're just honest and you can communicate without shame, blame, or judgment what you need in the moment, 9 times out of 10, your partner is not only going to be able to fulfill the need, they have a similar need, and you can create a win-win, a positive sum game where both of you win. This goes for sex, this goes for emotions, this goes for resources, this goes for health and healing, and all the things that are going to bond you long term and create success happen with honest communication. So that's like kind of the cornerstone of everything. And then having structures like, I don't think rushing to move in together and cohabitate is always a good thing for some people. I think taking a lot of space, knowing love languages is huge. Um, Having agreements, like making explicit agreements this is what I expect around other people and jealousy, right? This is what I expect in terms of running a home together, running a family. This is what I expect and desire in terms of getting our needs met and like how we show up for each other. You can make all of that explicit and create agreements. Like and when I work with couples, married or otherwise, it's like you need to kind of have a relationship check-in or board meeting where you go over all this stuff and lay it all out there, even if it's uncomfortable. And it's very uncomfortable if you've never done it. But once it's out in the open and you realize, oh wait, I'm still worthy of love. Person's not going to just leave me. They're here, they're committed then all your options increase because you can actually work on this stuff out in the open above board and it's not all hidden, unsaid. That's what's going to predict long-term relationships. I just got married, newlywed. So, you know, older couples and people have said, well, yeah, you don't know shit. Wait till you have kids and you've been married 20 years. Then you'll see the real work and the hard stuff begins. And I know that's true. But it's not going to change the approach that's worked really well for me and a lot of my clients. It's like, if you can have agreements that are explicit, if you can be open and honest, become a pro communicator, increase your emotional intelligence, decenter yourself. And at times, other times you need to be selfish or self-full, and your partner will actually appreciate that. It's a dance. And once you just get serious about it, just as serious as your business or the merger or talking to that VC or running your coaching business, your relationship is going to give energy to everything else. And it's one of the most primary things. A lot of people treat it as secondary or tertiary. They don't focus on it. And then they wonder why they're always anxious, depressed, in emotional arguments, sexless marriage, whatever. It's like you have to nurture it and grow it like a garden.
Mm. what would you say to this dilemma? Leto Atreides the second or Paul Muad'Dib? If you're given one choice.
I mean, I'm a big fan of Paul because he's the GOAT, he's the original, but the God Emperor, I mean, you could argue he was the ultimate tyrant, but also like was trying to steer human evolution.
Yep,
So
agreed.
that's I mean the Dune and one and Messiah are my favorites, but God Emperor is my next favorite. That's tied with it. Um, yeah. I mean the real legends might be Duncan Idaho and Gurney Halleck.
He just keeps coming back. Yeah. I mean, like he's unkillable. Um, any thoughts on Tron Ares?
It looks interesting. I mean, I like the trailer. I love Tron. I hope it's good. I hope it's not woke or lame or AI, but yeah, I'll go see it.
It was good. I've only seen it twice.
Oh, is it out already? I gotta go see it.
Yeah. So if there was one thing you wish everyone could know to thrive in relationship and dating and sexuality, actually one thing for each of those, what would that be? And you might have already said it, which is fine. The communication, the honesty piece is strong.
That's the biggest one, I think. But I mean, in dating, it's like the number one thing I wish more people know is that you can have whatever you want. Most people are just it's like Neo. They're limited by the matrix of their beliefs. And those are all like, it's like Morpheus. It's like he's beginning to believe. If you just believe and go for it full bore, you may not get it the first try, second, 10th try, but you can literally have whatever you want. So a lot of people in dating, when they're selecting someone, they think they can't have someone who's beautiful and intelligent or someone who's, good in bed and emotionally regulated. It's like, that's all bullshit. You can literally do it. I've done it. I'm an ordinary dude. So if I can do it, you can do it. Seen plenty of clients who just thought it was absolutely not impossible and they had to make sacrifices and compromises, do it. That's the biggest one. And it's like, if you believe that and go for it, you will be stunned with what you can achieve in dating and selecting a partner. In terms of sexuality, it's like if you can combine prayer and breath and energetic awareness in that state, you will create the ultimate drug in your life in terms of health, wealth, prosperity, intuition, connection. It's the ultimate gift that keeps on giving, and everyone needs to know how to do it. Like in a golden age, enlightened world, all children and all people, there'd be no shame around sexuality, and sacred sexuality would be taught and practiced between consenting adults that are partnered, and it would heal the world. So that is a big one. That's a whole rabbit hole. And yeah, long-term relating, it's honesty, but it's honestly like it's deeper than that because it's about values and principles. So
Mm.
you need to select someone and cultivate with someone shared value systems. Some of that can't be changed because we have innate values that we're born with, but a lot of it can be cultivated. And if you do that, that's what survives the hard times. That's what gets you through really tough fights or challenges or tragedies, suffering. Those are eternal. Values and principles are primary. All the other stuff, emotions come and go, thoughts come and go, seasons come and go, your body's going to age and get old. That's the most real stuff that, like in my marriage, is going to be primary.
Mm. Have you seen or do you teach, and if so, what's your recipe for manifestation of an ideal partner? Like you said, don't let yourself off the hook. Reach for the stars, basically. And
Yeah.
just curious if you have a methodology or
I mean, the simplest formula that, again, I used, it works. I've seen it work with a lot of different clients from all walks of life. People that don't believe in spirituality at all and are kind of materialist, all the way to the mega woo tantrika in Bali. Um, get clear, fast, meditate, pray, qigong, yoga, whatever your practice is, get clear. Write down exactly what you want. Like literally write it down. Everything. Physical, emotional, spiritual, psychological, sexual, financial, like everything. Write down what you want. You're placing your order. Then get honest about where you're at. So for a lot of people, they're obsessed with the ideal man or the perfect woman, but they're not even focused on themselves. They're not becoming the ideal partner. So that's a big part of it is you have to become and embody that and then let it go.
Hmm.
Now you can meditate and study on that. You're obviously going to update it because you're going to want different things in different seasons of life. When you meet someone and date them, you now have a benchmark and a coordinate, and you can just say like, "Oh, is this what I want or not?" Most of the problems with all that is just not knowing what you want. Once you know what you want, write it down, release it to nature, burn it, bury it, meditate on it, whatever. All the classic manifestation stuff really works just because that's how the world works. It's natural law. And, again, you'll be surprised because it'll be a chance encounter. It always is a synchronicity. And you'll meet someone who not only has all the things you wrote down, it has more stuff you didn't know you wanted, and you'll just be blown away. You won't even be able to believe it. And that's where the sabotage comes in because it's hard to receive what you actually want, but you can have it. And there's someone out there, there's billions of people. So there's multiple people that probably have pieces of it. And sometimes, I believe, people come into your life for a reason, season, or lifetime, or all three. You might have to go through seasons of dating or relating to get to them. But as Annie Lala says, amazing relationship coach here in Austin, I saw her speak years and years ago, and I still think this is true. It's like the person in front of you is either the one or they're training you for the one. They're preparing you. And if you go in like that, you can't make a mistake.
That's brilliant, man, and really delightful. I've been standing for people to have their ultimate divine partner for 10 years and to hear that confirmation and the depth and richness and how you distinguish it. It's just so nourishing. My curiosity, and it was implied by your last comments, seasons, right? You come back to you spiral back to this concept a number of times, and some of my men may be aware of the gap between who they are in their current embodiment and where they will need to be or get to in order to be a energetic vibrational match for their ultimate relationship. So is it ethical for them to pursue a shorter term? I mean, I guess if the honesty is there, letting someone know, hey, I eventually want to be married, but I don't think I'm ready for that. And I want to date around, I want to experience, and I think I might want a relationship with you, but I don't know if it's going to be a forever thing. I mean, the way I used to conceive of it is you can raise yourself to God and your highest expression, or you can reach for someone who's inevitably going to be a mirror to where you've let yourself off the hook, to where you've gotten lazy, to the apathy that has driven you to stop reaching. And it's not as binary as that. Like, as you're implying, and that was such a beautiful distinction that someone could be training you for the one. And I look back on all my relationships. I'm not married, I'm not partnered. And I see my past three relationships with avoidant attached women that turned into failed engagements. Now, failed is a story, so can't so clear on that. It didn't play out in the marriage that I expected, but I grew exponentially. And so I tell people, I'm here to help you have your next relationship be the best and last relationship of your life, or the next best relationship step in the direction of that relationship. That would be my upgrade via you today. And so, yeah, I mean, how would you relate to that whole nexus point, that whole curious inquiry that someone might be in?
I mean, it's all true. Like what you said is absolutely true. Like the distinction is if you're playing at your edge truly, it'll be very hard to just have a short-term relationship knowing your patterns and where you're at in the lessons. Like the universe is a university. You repeat the grade or the course until you learn it. So if you're repeating a course a lot, like patterns or whatever with a certain type of woman, for example, as a man, you're going to get your ass kicked. So that's the thing. Like your soul, your circumstances are gonna make it so painful to keep playing that out that you're gonna create like toxic dynamics or whatever. And that's the distinction. If you're like bypassing and being like, well, I'm being honest, this is what I want, and I want to, but like you're stuck in that, that's not good. And a lot of people do that. I've done that. If you really know and you really want to go for it, like there's a threshold. I met my wife when I was in a season of that, of like, okay, I'm just gonna open up, have options. I know I want it eventually, but I'm not sure. But then she walks in and it's like, fuck, okay, it's go time. I can't play the game anymore. I knew immediately that I couldn't play out the pattern. So that'll shock you into it. A lot of people get blessed with that. Um, I think for a lot of women I've worked with, it's different where they have options because women, it's a little easier because women are always going to be desired. As a man, you actually have to go for it and develop yourself. I mean, women do too, but women, like, you could do nothing as a woman and men will line up just because that's how biology works in a sense. For them, it often holding the line is really important. So not saying yes to a casual or short-term thing, even if it's beautiful and it would be a lesson, but you know in your heart that you want the real thing. You want the long-term thing. It's not going to serve you.
Mm,
So there's seasons of rapid growth and relating, and there's seasons of holding the line for the big one. And the big one may not work. It may be 7 years, you may even have a kid, get married, and then it ends. And like that is also reality. So it's like the happily ever after idea, like
mm.
I've worked with plenty of people who got divorced or like had that whole story arc. It made them better if they allowed it. Some people it derails them forever. So it's a very touch and go thing, and it's very subjective and personal. But the seasons are real, and if you know how to read the terrain and be honest with yourself about where you're at, um, you can really achieve some mind-blowing love that will melt and change your life. And that's the gold for me, and that's what I support people to approach even 1% of.
Oh man, I absolutely resonate with that. I agree with that. It's difficult to run from that. I wrote a best-selling book in sacred sex last year from my last relationship, and it's difficult to imagine setting foot in a relationship that's less than something that's that high quality ever again. It's like I think David Hume calls it delicacy of taste, right? Applied to aesthetics and ethics now here and spirituality. Um, so I'm curious. Oh man, you implied earlier, you suggested a deep awareness of like magic. I'm curious of your experience with that beyond manifestation, perhaps even in the direction of mystical, like Western esotericism. Did, do you play in that, or do you have opinions on the value of that for the modern man, the modern world?
I mean, I am that. Like, we are that. Like, we're like everything's magic. Magic is just like there's all these definitions of it, right? Like the like magician Western stream Crowley and all this shit. It's like, the accordance of matter and consciousness with will and changing. Like, I think that's a very limited view of magic. Like, go sit in nature without your phone, completely sober, and just breathe. And like magic's just gonna erupt out of the plants around you, out of the animals, out of your body. The universe is, energy, frequency, vibration, as Tesla said. The systems of magic are all ways to understand natural law. So, like, you can look at Qigong and Chinese medicine and Kung Fu and martial arts. They're working with, Jing, Qi, Shi, the Wei Qi field, like these bodily, like that's a whole system. Yoga is a whole system, which was kind of Qigong and yoga were my first portals into this.
Mm.
Yoga is a very powerful magical system of activating your body and like all that. The manifestation, mentalism stuff is very interesting to me. Love the Kybalion, love Hermeticism. Like, I geek out on this shit. One of the greatest books that's like a survey of all the mysticism in the world is The Secret Teachings of All Ages, Manly P. Hall. I
Cool.
read that whole thing when I was backpacking through Thailand and Laos and like just blew my mind. Um, and magic is polar. So there's black and white magic. There's gray magic and there's you can get really in the weeds with like systems and ceremonial magic and rituals and paganism and blah, 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 blah. For me, it's like breathing. So when you see an image in your mind, when you say words, these are spells. It's spelling.
Hmm.
Your voice is magic. It's Dune. It's the voice. Okay. Everyone has the voice. So that's the most common way for magic, which is my superpower, is my voice and language. That's all magic. For a lot of people, they're more intuitive or like, you can talk about the classic magical feats, right? Like clairsentience, claircognizance, clairvoyance, seeing things at a distance, feeling things before they happen, precognition, intuition is a whole magical domain. Claircognizance, knowing things you don't know how you knew them. You're pulling from the Akash or from the field, right? None of this is woo. Science has bumped into this shit. like the Large Hadron Collider and the Higgs boson and general relativity, they're describing the field that magicians were describing in these ancient texts with different language. Like science and quantum theory and ancient mysticism and magic, they did this big circuitous thing and they're in the same domain. Now we know through guys like Greg Braden and Joe Dispenza, the body can literally repair itself. You can turn on dormant neurons and stem cells and regrow tissue and organs. And, people have healed themselves of insane things. There's no ailment on the planet right now. This is my buddy. He's actually going to start a documentary on this and a bunch of other stuff. But basically, there's no ailment on the planet, anything, cancer, like all the craziest shit that humans can't heal endogenously.
Hmm.
And
I
then, scientists, we hear this maybe and be like, that's bullshit, like blah, 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 blah. It's like, well, there's evidence of at least one person. Now, they don't know why. Is it placebo? Is it blah, 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 blah? They can heal it. And then you get into the plants. So the most like obvious place that magic will, I was like full materialist. Like after I left Catholicism, I'm reading like,
me too.
Sagan and Nietzsche and what's his
Yep.
name? Dawkins. I was reading like Selfish Gene, like Richard Dawkins. And I never went atheist, but I was like kind of agnostic, like materialist. I was like, all right, maybe science is the way and it's all material and blah, blah, blah. Descartes, like maybe Descartes was right. And that was a very brief phase because, cannabis, psilocybin, LSD, breath work completely erased that worldview in like a 6 hour session. Because it's literally just like the plants, and I'm very advocate for plants. I think a lot of synthetics, bad news. Although there's, use with intention, you can transmute anything. The plants, these ancient plants that literally perfectly mimic our endogenous neurotransmitters, millions of years old. Psilocybin, I think, being the most prolific and powerful, but you can get into all the fancy other stuff, all the DMT compounds, harmaline, Syrian rue, ayahuasca, blah, 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 blah. And I'm not advocating for any of this. They're extremely potent. They're like the atomic bomb of consciousness. They need to be done with intention, with groundedness, ideally with a facilitator, so I'm not advocating for any of it. That being said, you want to talk about magic? Instantly you're going to be transported into a dimension. And I'm not talking about like hallucinations and seeing colored lights. I'm talking about the felt presence that everything's alive, everything's made of energy, and your intention and consciousness can interface with all of it. Go look into a puppy's eyes or a baby's eyes. Go touch a tree in nature or go sit in a stream and close your eyes and deeply breathe. It's all magic. Now, in terms of like the future, yeah, I think all the stuff in X-Men and Marvel and all the superhuman, metahuman shit, that's all real, and we can all do it. So what Yeshua is saying in the Dead Sea Scrolls, he's like, if you bring forth what is within you, you can do anything. You can tell the mountain to move, and it'll move. And I'm not special. You can all do what I'm doing. You know, I think that's where humanity has to go. We're going to get into pretty wild, I've done all these experiments with like these very autistic kids or kids with Down syndrome or just normal kids, blindfolding them. They have like an 80% precognitive rate on like playing cards or shapes, like very basic precognition tests. The kids with no training can do it like that once you just tell them how to do it. I forget what it's called. There's like a famous study going around. So the something tape, the telepathy tapes is one of them.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, we all can do this as kids, and adults can do it too. Be magicians. It just takes intention and practice.
Fascinating, delightful, definitely reaffirming, and the mind, once expanded, can never return to its former limits. So I'd be surprised if there were people listening who had not come into these awarenesses, but I love the X-Men future, and so I've got probably two more questions, just brief answers, and then I want to make sure we get people aware of what you're most excited about, up to, into creating containers and whatnot. This is just a yes or no. I'm imagining you're not a dogmatic, devoted Christian following a particular one of the 50,000 interpretations of Christian scripture saying that it's the ultimate truth. Yes or no?
No.
Okay, yeah, that's also reassuring. Um, Last two questions then. As a big brother, so to speak, and colleague in the dating and relationship space, who has achieved traction in the marketplace. I'm really curious what your journey was to getting there. And I know that that could be a whole nother podcast. If that answer for you to answer sufficiently, you're absolutely invited back if you feel called or inspired to engage with that in a different way. But that's my last question before who you best serve and how we can get them into more conversations with you through this. So,
I mean, like I said in my story, it was just like I was solving my own problem. And then early in my career, it was all like workshops and retreats. Like coaching actually came second. Um, and I just started teaching it. Like at events, like it wouldn't even be an event on polarity or dating, and I would just do an exercise on it, and people were gushing and telling me to do more of it. So I was like, all right, I guess I'll do it. And then I got into a lot of men's work, and that was a huge topic inside the men's work and coaching clients. So it was honestly just practice. And then by deconstructing my own way of thinking about it and my approach to dating, my approach to relating, intimacy, blah, 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 I broke that down into my own systems, which then I've taught to clients. Like I did a group program I still draw from a lot called Primal Polarity, which is just like, to me, it's very innate, basic stuff. But when it's spelled out and with exercises and practice and nuance, people get a lot out of it. So now it's more like people come to me for like life coaching, but then we find out their biggest issue is dating and relationships. Or people come to me for dating and relationships, and then we realize after we've poked around in that there's a whole nother domain and their business or like their creativity. And so I'm pretty fluid with that with one-on-ones. Yeah, so there's a lot there, but it's kind of just been my crux. So I've shared it a lot, and I also enjoy it and geek out about it.
who would you say, and this is the last question probably for today, who do you most delight to serve, and where can they find you if they want more of what they've heard here, seen, and experienced?
I love working with young or old entrepreneur men who want a super powerful polarized relationship and also want to be like soul heart aligned in business and create a bunch of impact and success. I love supporting those men. I love them in my men's circle or one-on-one. I love being like a Obi-Wan or Gandalf character to their Luke or Frodo and just like be the wizard in their pocket. Like I love that. For women, I love working for like, recovering boss babes or very high performance career based women. Usually we do less business, but just completely blow their mind and reorient them around their power as a woman, as a magnetic partner and intimate woman. Like I love working with those kind of women. And then often, they're coupled and I like working with couples as well that are those ilk.
La any last words?
No, I've really enjoyed this. I'm actually rebooting my podcast, and I just love podcasting. Like if someone just would pay me $1 million a year just to do this, like Rogan, I would be in heaven. I could literally do this all day. I love it, and we covered some pretty amazing territory and range, so it's always fun to see where it goes in jazz mode.
Yeah, I did not expect us to go as far out or in the directions that we did. I'm glad we did. It's been just such an honor, a privilege, a pleasure to have you. And yeah, to all those listening, please like, share, subscribe, comment below, and follow this man. He's fun to listen to. That's it. Make love easy, y'all.